What's the most fucked up thing you saw at a sleepover? When I was 12, we went on a family trip to Vegas. I woke up in the hotel to my parents having sex in the bed next to me. I was trapped and had nowhere to go. My mom said something along the lines of, "Stop, we're gonna wake up the kids." My dad gets up, walks over to our bed and rips the blankets off our faces and said, "See, fast asleep." I should have won an Oscar. It would have only been better if you had your eyes wide open, blank stare. The dad's mistress came over. Apparently the mother knew of her existence, and it had been putting a strain on things. My buddy and I hid in the basement, while the wife and mistress were screaming at each other upstairs. Shockingly, did not cause a divorce. I was staying at my buddy's house when his dad showed up. His parents were separate, but divorce hadn't happened yet. Apparently mom had a new boyfriend over and somehow dad got wind. I still remember hearing him pounding on the front door and screaming while his mom and the boyfriend yelled back. Eventually the cops came and took his dad away for disturbing the peace or something like that. Same thing, we were huddled in the basement listening to all of it, and then his mom came down and acted like nothing had happened. Asked if we wanted a snack or something. I just wanted to go home. When I was in elementary school, I got invited with my sister to a birthday party of one of her friends. Everything was going fine for most of the night, and then the catastrophe happened. Her mom came down to the basement, and was clearly very upset, but didn't explain why. She then had each of us line up on the stairs from the basement to the ground level of the house, and brought us in one by one. I wasn't the first in line, but no one was telling us what happened once it was their turn. Finally I was up, and her mom took me into the bathroom, and showed me a trash can with a poop in it. She was basically on the verge of tears, pointing to the trash can and asking me, "Is this your poop? Is this your poop?" It wasn't. We never found out whose it was, or at least I wasn't told. We have joked that someone will finally come forward on their deathbed, but my sister and I have since lost contact with those girls, so we may never know. "This is the last time I'm asking, goddammit!" Slams fists on table. "Is this your poop?" I was 13 to 14 and staying the night at a friend's house with two other girls, when we were woken up by a loud popping noise from her brother's room. Naturally, 4 curious girls went to see what the hell he was doing at 3 in the morning. Her mom came running up the stairs about the time we entered his room, and quickly herded us back out of his room in hysterics. It took my brain forever to register that he had shot himself in the chest. Luckily he survived, and I never had another sleepover at someone else's house again. Plenty of nightmares though. If you don't mind me asking, was it an accident or suicide attempt? He claimed accident, but he had a lot of stuff going on, so we all assumed failed suicide. Found my friend's older brother's anime body pillow. He had clearly did the dirty with it. His body pillow stands up on its own. His body pillow has a life of its own, or several million tiny ones anyway. Saw my friend's parents having sex. Parents had no idea me and my friend saw them. Yeah, same here, saw they're out of shape, drunk off their asses as usual, parents slow fucking in a rhythm that still doesn't make sense 40 years and a variety of partners later. First time seeing adult genitals in person in sex. I can't believe how vivid that unfortunate memory is when I've forgotten so much more important stuff since. When I was like 9 or 10 I spent the night at a friend's house. I knew his mom was pretty strict, but holy shit did I find out how much. He did something really minor like leave his socks in the living room and she started shouting at him like he left a turd on the floor or something. Then he pissed her off again that night, and she wailed on his ass so hard that it scared me. She was a psycho the way she was spanking and shouting at him. I hated her guts after that night. Had a friend like that, went to his house and accidentally went in the good living room, and he freaked out. I thought it was super weird, but he got the vacuum out in order to remove my footprints from the living room carpet. It was in a thick pile, not dirt or anything, but it meant you could see where I walked. For a second I thought it was funny, but he was so scared of his mom that it really freaked me out. They also had to shower sitting in their bathtub so that they wouldn't splash water everywhere. Super sad that people that crazy even have kids in the first place. My mom screaming at us for covering the kitchen floor with water and dish soap at 2 a.m. so we could go skating. At the time, I really couldn't understand what she was so upset about. But Mom, we're helping clean. Kid who had a pee jar in his closet. It was a gallon pickle jar. If he had to pee in the middle of the night, he had to use the jar. Once his mom put us, in his room for the night, we weren't allowed to leave his room until she came to get us the next morning. How did they make sure of that? The door knob was turned around backwards so they could lock us in. What if there was a fire? That's what the gallon of pee was for. I had a friend whose dad had a fish tank of piranha. I really wanted to feed them a hot dog, but her dad told me they already ate. During the night, I snuck down to where the fish tank was, and there was picked clean fish bones in the tank. The dad was down there watching football, and he spotted me and asked if I still wanted to feed the piranha. Being a small piranha-obsessed child, I nodded and produced the hot dog I saved from the barbecue dinner we had. It was the most terrifying and awesome thing I have ever saw. 1010 would never want to watch 3 piranha go at a hot dog ever again. Least not in person. I'm so sorry you'll have to suffer the mental image of this, but it was a classic high school sleepover. We ate tons of junk food and drank a good amount of smuggled beers, after which friend number 1 suggests we sneak into the community pool to go skinny dipping. We were all pretty reckless, so it came as a surprise when friend number 2 vehemently opposed the idea. He absolutely would not budge for the longest time. Of course, we eventually bullied him into compliance, as HS kids do, climbed the fence, dropped our drawers, and went for a dip. Unfortunately for us, it must have been a full moon that night, because despite the lateness of the evening, there was still enough light for us all to see. To our horror, the aptly named friend number 2 began releasing stream after stream of projectile diarrhea just moments after we all got in the pool. And yes, it looked exactly like what you're undoubtedly picturing in your mind right now. We also completely neglected to bring towels, so we ended the night with a long, wet, cold, and completely silent walk back to friend number 1's house. The next morning, friend number 2 pretended to have blacked out from his 2 beers and claimed he had no memory of the event. We are still friends to this day, and hilariously enough, he is now my gastroenterologist. When I was 9 and in Girl Scouts, we had a troop sleepover party that was relatively unsupervised, and at some point girls just started reaching down each other's pants and ripping their underwear out. Other girls were shoving worn socks in each other's mouths and pulling hair. I just remember sitting in a corner and guarding myself with a ping-pong paddle. Not me, but a friend. When we were 14, she went to a girl's house for a sleepover. Girl's dad let them hang out in the garage and drink beer. Later, my friend was sitting outside alone, and the dad came out and started talking to her. Then he tried to kiss her, and as she backs away, the mom walked out and caught him. She started screaming at both of them, and told my friend she needed to leave. She was 14 and drunk, and the girl whose house it was told her mom that was bullshit, and she was staying. My friend said she couldn't sleep all night. The next morning, the mom took my friend alone into the bedroom and apologized, and said they were having marital problems, and he had cheated on her before. Hopefully it wasn't with any other kids. Not a sleepover in the traditional sense, as we were both in our early 20s, but I once had a friend visiting from interstate, and I let him crash at my parents' to save him on accommodation costs. Trying to be a good host, I let him sleep in my bed and I slept on the floor. Woke up to the sound of this shithead wanking in my bed. Who fucking does that? Still pisses me off to this day. It's nothing that I saw, but more like something that happened to me. I was 13 when I stayed over at my friend's house for the night. We were up pretty late playing video games and eating snacks. I got thirsty, so me and my friend went to the fridge to get a bottle of Coke. When I opened the bottle, the soda shot straight up my face and got all over my white shirt. I asked my friend if I could shower since I was pretty sticky from the soda. Once I got out the shower, I noticed my friend and his little brother were knocked out in the living room sofas. BTW, I had no shirt on since the soda ruined mine completely. That's when their aunt came through the front door and saw me. She got close to me and started to rub her hands around my chest and shoulders. I was completely shocked and stayed still. Then my friend's brother woke up and saw what was going on. She stopped touching me right away and said, "Oh, I thought you were my nephew," then went straight to her room and never came out until I left the next morning. Even if I were her nephew, why the hell would she touch me like that? To this day, I wonder what would have happened if my friend's little brother hadn't woken up. That was the first and last sleepover at that place ever again. A friend of mine went to have a sleepover at his friend's house after the friend threw a baby shower. Not only was the friend's pregnant girlfriend drinking and smoking weed, but my friend said that he had to sleep on the floor and noticed things crawling along the floor. They were maggots. He ended up sleeping in his car. When I was around 13 to 14, a kid I invited over to my sleepover birthday party decided to strip down to his tighty-whities right before cake and ice cream. Myself, my parents, friends and relatives were mortified. Apparently it was normal behavior at his house. Maybe he didn't want to get cake and ice cream all over his clothes. Not really fucked up, but I was terrified. One night I slept over at my friend's house. I wake up in the middle of the night because I felt sick. However, my friend wasn't in his bed and both clocks were broken and stuck at some random time like 1:38 a.m. or something. I was convinced that time had frozen and everyone disappeared. I remember crying and being too scared to go downstairs to check the microwave clock. Eventually I went into his parents' room and woke up his parents. My friend was sleeping in his parents' bed too. LOL. One time I was at a friend's house for a sleepover and he and another friend held me down on the couch and tried to light my hair on fire with lighters. I managed to break free and ran upstairs and asked my friend's mom to let me use the phone. Mom came promptly to pick me up. Needless to say, I was not on speaking terms with the other two again. Girl put a massive ant in her vagina right in front of me like it was nothing. Same girl introduced my sisters and I to the choke yourself out game, where you take several deep breaths, hyperventilate, and hold your breath until you pass out. Whoever fakes it had to sleep alone. Needless to say, my mom was pissed when she found us all unconscious in different areas of the bedroom. Reading this reminded me of a sleepover I went to when I was 11. One of girls seemed to be special needs, couldn't talk and needed assistance with eating. The birthday girl had told me she was her cousin and that her parents forced to have her over. I was a kind human and tried to help her whatnot. This went on for a couple of hours. Then she started having a seizure which got me upset because, unbeknownst to them, my dad had died of one and I started to freak out. Turns out, she was pretending. Everyone was in on it, and they laughed hysterically. They thought it would be fun to do that to me. I asked to call my mom so I could go home. Being bullied sucks. I remember we did a secondary school bonding thing in our first year where you effectively go to a summer camp for the weekend with the whole year group. About 2001112-year-olds, to get to know everyone. Sleeping arrangements were in dormitories with bunk beds, separated by gender, about 30 to a room. Lights go out in my dorm, no teachers, just 30 11 to 12-year-olds that don't know each other that well. A kid farts. Hilarious. Someone else farts, a few others. Then, I vividly remember a distinct sloppy sound followed by a panicked, "Oh, a kid shat himself." I would also like to note, this was not the only public pants shitting by this kid. He did it again final year during our Duke of Edinburgh Award expedition, overnight whilst camping. I was sharing a tent with him. That's a whole different story. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.